Hello everyone, welcome to iFashi. In today's tutorial, we'll be teaching us how to make this very simple and beautiful dress. I got the inspiration on the black you're seeing on the first frame, and then I decided to make some tweaks so that mine will come out different a bit. In this tutorial, you'll get to see how we added all of the embellishments to add beauty to this very simple dress, and also you'll be getting answers to questions like how to get rid of zipper budges on dresses with or without joining on the waist. You see how flat and beautiful the zipper is laying on my back? Yes, we're going to be learning all of that in this tutorial. And another thing you'll be learning from this tutorial is how to do all of your inner joinings and sewing to come out very neat like this, so that when either you or your client open up the inside of their dress, they'll be very impressed with the neatness of your job. You can see how neat the inside of this dress is looking. You'll be learning how we did all the turning in this tutorial. So guys, let's get right into the drafting. We are going to first of all start by drafting out our front and back bodies on this pattern paper, and here is the fabric we're going to be using for this tutorial. It's a 2-yard sample fabric. I'll also be using this cotton lining to turn it on the inside. I initially bought this gold applique that I'll use for the neckline, but I later changed my mind. Now let's go ahead and draft the front bodice. At the top of my paper, as you can see on the screen, I've marked out my starting line, which is also going to be my shoulder line, where all of my measurements will be taken from. From there downwards, I'm going to mark 10 inches for the bust, 13 for the under bust, and 17.5 for my front waist line. So I'll mark out 10 inches for the bust line, 13 inches for the under bust line, and 17.5 for the front waistline. I'll go ahead and repeat all of these measurements, and I'll use my straight ruler to mark out lines and label these points so that we'll know what they are for. After marking out the lines, we're going to go to the waistline and go down with 9 inches from the waist. That's the point we'll be taking our hip measurement. 9 inches downwards from the waist. After marking that out, you can now go ahead and mark out the full length of your dress. This is how long you want it to be. I'm using 38 inches here because that's the length I want to be working with. So I'll mark out 38 inches, I'll roll out that point and also label it the full length line before we go ahead and start taking other measurements. Now going back to the upper part of this pattern paper, we're going to go ahead and take out the chest line. This chest line, some persons usually just go up with 2 inches from the bust line to get their chest line, but the formula I use is dividing my bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5 to my answer. That gave me 7.5, which means if I had used the regular 2 inches, it wouldn't have worked for me. Which means using the regular 2 inches doesn't work for everybody. So I'm going to mark out a line on that point and label it my chest line. After doing that now, I'll take my shoulder measurement divided by 2 on the shoulder line and mark it out on the shoulder line. I'll also take the same shoulder measurement divided by 2 and mark it out on this chest line that we just took. And then I'll connect it upwards from the chest to meet the shoulder. Now after connecting it upwards, we're going to go ahead and take out the neck measurement so that we can connect our shoulder slope from the neck to the shoulder. So I'm marking out the regular 3 inches for the neck width, and then I'll come down with 1 inch for my shoulder slope on this straight line we went up with, and I'll connect it to meet my neck line. And that's that for the shoulder slope. The next we're going to do now is to take out the armhole curve. We're going to measure what we have on this straight line from the shoulder slope to the chest line, mark out the midpoint and go inwards with 0.5 on that midpoint. And then you go ahead and take your bust measurement divided by 4 on your chest line. After that, you now introduce your curve ruler to mark out this curve. This curve is connecting these 3 points from the shoulder to the 0.5 to the bust measurement you took on the chest line. Now that we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and take our nipple to nipple measurement, which is the bust span measurement. My bust span measurement is 8 inches, so I'm dividing it by 2 and imputing 4 inches on my bust line, under bust and front waistline. And then to extend this dart, we're going to go downwards with 6 inches from the waistline and also take the same bust span measurement there. Now, we're marking out this straight line so that we can take our under bust darts. Now for the under bust dart, I'm taking out 1.75 for my under bust tightening. If you're plus size, you can go ahead and use 2 inches or 2.5 to tighten your under bust. I'll take the same 1.75 on my waistline, and then I'll use my straight ruler to connect these darts to meet the dart leg. Now for the under bust part, you're going to use your curve ruler to mark out that curve you have on the under bust. Watch closely to see how I am doing it. Use your curve ruler. Make sure it's the same point of your curve ruler you use on both sides so that the curve will be equal. Now at this point, if you want it to be a princess dart, you're going to go ahead and connect from this bust point to meet the midpoint of the armhole. We are not doing that here because this is not a princess dart. So now we're going to go back to the neck part to mark out the shape of the neck we are working with. Remember I came in with 3 inches for the neck. I'm going to add 0.5 extra because the neck is not very tight. It's a square shaped neck. So after coming out to 0.5, you now determine how high you want the chest part to be. If you want to follow your chest line, that is very okay. If you also want to come up from your chest line a bit, that's also fine. For me, I'm coming up with 0.5 from my chest line upwards, right? Because I don't want it to be too low on the chest. Now after coming up with 0.5, you're going to go ahead and measure the width of the chest. That's the opening you want on that chest. I came in with 5.5 from the beginning of my paper, which means my chest will be opened with 11 inches. My chest will be 11 inches wide because this paper is on fold, right? After marking out that 5.5, I'll connect it to meet my shoulder where the neckline is coming from. So I'll use this red marker now to highlight this neck part so that you don't get confused. Also, if you're not doing a square shaped neck, you can go ahead and do a round neck or a V neck. Is completely optional. You can just play around whatever neckline you want to do. Now that we're done with that neck part, we're going to take our measurements on these lines that we marked out. Starting with the bust measurement, I'm going to take my bust measurement divided by 4 on the bust line. I'll impute my answer there. And then I also take my waist measurement divided by 4 on the waistline. And remember to impute the dart back. Remember there is a dart on that waistline. Remember to put it back so that you don't get short when you're cutting. Now I'll use my ruler to connect these measurements together from the waistline up to meet the armhole point. And on the hip line, I'm going to also take my hip measurement divided by 4 and impute my answer there. And after that, I'll connect from the waist to meet the hip. Now for the full length of my dress, I'm going to take the same hip measurement I took on my hip and impute it at the full length of my dress. This is if you want your dress to go straight down. At this full length part, you can play around it and do whatever you want to do at this point. You can make it flare. If you want it flared, you're not going to take your exact hip measurement there. You're going to add about 2 inches to your hip measurement so that it will open on that down part. But if you want it tighter on your legs, especially if it's not up to your knee, you're going to come inward with 1 inch. Like you're going to minus 1 inch from your hip measurement and connect it to meet your hip. As you can see, we have 2 lines here. One is the tighter one and the other one is the open one. You can also make it 3 lines by going 2 inches outwards to make it flare on that part. So feel free to do whatever design you want to do on this hemline part. Now the next thing we're going to do now is to remove our side bust darts. Remember, the shoulder to waist measurement on the front and shoulder to waist measurement on the back is not the same. This is why some people have their zip bulging. If you use the same waistline for back and front, your zip will not relax. So you're going to take out the difference you have from your front and back waist measurements and cut it off from your side bust dart. Mine is 1.5, so I came down from the bust line with 1.5 and I slanted it towards the bust point. So I'll be cutting that part off as my side bust dart. So as we know, we're going to be cutting this pattern paper into 2. We're going to have the center front and the side front. Now for you to know where you want to cut it to, you're going to connect from this bust point to meet the neckline. And for you not to have an obvious stitch there, I'm just using my curve ruler to make a connection, like a princess dart connection, towards the end of the chest line. That's the beginning of the sleeves, because the sleeve is going to be cut together with the side front, right? So after making that connection there, I'm going to take out a dart, a 0.5 inch dart on that point. This is just to tighten our chest. You don't want your chest to be bulging. For it to lay flat on your chest, you're going to take out 0.5 inch dart on that chest part. Now that we have connected it from the bust to this chest, you can see that the side front will be cut along with the sleeve and the center front will be cut out separately. And after doing that, we're also going to extend from the dart leg downwards to the end of the dress so that we can now cut out the center front separate from the side front. When it's time to cut out this pattern paper, you're going to be seeing how we'll be cutting this front piece. Now that we're done with the front piece, let us go ahead and draft the back. For the back piece, I've gone ahead to mark out our basic lines, the same thing we did for the front. The only difference is at the beginning of your paper, mark out your zipper allowance. After taking out the zipper allowance, you now mark our shoulder line, which is the first line on the paper, the bust line, which is 10 inches, the back waistline, the hip line, and the full length. So I'll label out my zipper allowance, and then I'll show you guys the lines we have here. We have the shoulder line, which is the beginning of our paper. We have 10 inches, which is the bust, and 16 inches for the back waist. Remember, our front waistline is 17.5. That's the difference we took out on the side bust dart. Now, from the waistline, I came down with 9 inches to get our hip line. And then from the waistline, I also measured what I have in front. From front waistline to full length, I took the same thing from back waistline to full length. Endeavor to measure this part so that your back will not come out shorter than the front. Now we're going to go to the neck line. The same 3.5 I have on my front neck, I took it on my back, starting from our zipper allowance, not the beginning of our pattern paper. Now to mark out the depth of our back neck, I'm going to come down with 1 inch at the back neck and use my curve ruler to mark out the neck, slanting it towards the end of my zipper allowance. Now that we're done with this, we're going to take the body measurement, starting with the nipple to nipple measurements for the back. I'm taking this on the bust line, the 4 inches I used for front, remember? Bust line, waistline, and the dart extension, which is 6 inches downwards from your waistline. Now to snatch the waist of my back, I'm going to use 2 inches, which is 1 inch on the left and 1 inch on the right. I'll use my straight ruler to connect these darts together. For this back piece, I'll not be cutting it as a princess dart, it's just one piece. The only stitch we're going to have is on the zipper allowance part. I'm not going to tear the center back or side back open. But if you want to do that, go ahead and connect from the midpoint of your armhole to meet the bust point here. And make sure the slanting is not too sharp so that it doesn't give your back any puff. Now you're going to go ahead and also take your body measurement on all of these lines. The waist measurement on the waistline, remember to impute your dart. The hip measurement on the hip line, the bust measurement on the bust line, and connect these measurements together. Now for the full length of the dress, I'm also going to repeat the same thing I did for the front. Measure what you have on your hip line and impute the same answer at the full length of your dress and connect it together. But if you did the flare at the front, remember to repeat the same flare for your back. If you made your front tight, endeavor to also tighten the back. Now we have the center back and the side back. Remember, I'm not going to be cutting this open. Another hack to make your zipper lay very flat on your back is to reduce your zipper allowance at the waist point. I'm going to be coming inwards with 0.5 at my waistline, the back waistline. And I'll use my straight ruler to mark out a slant line from that 0.5 upwards to the neck and downwards to the full length of my dress. And I'll be cutting that part off. So you can see that aside the difference in front and back waist measurements, you also need to remove this 0.5 from your zipper allowance to flatten your zipper at your back. After doing this, I'll extend my dart downwards in case you want to cut out your center back and side back same way we did for front, but like I mentioned before, I will be using one piece for the back. Now, as you can see, if you measure it like this, it will not be equal because we have not closed our side bust that we have at the front. Remember to cut out this 0.5 you have at the back, and that will be that for the back piece. Now watch closely and see how I'm cutting the front. Before you cut out the side of the front, endeavor to close your side bust dart first, because when you close that side bust dart, you have a broken line at the side front. So you're going to close the side bust dart and then use your ruler and marker to straighten what you have, correct the broken line at the side before you go ahead and cut out the remaining part of the front. Now, after closing the side bust dart on the front, you can see that the back aligns with the front. Initially, the front was longer, but after closing the side bust dart, you're going to have the same measurements on the back and on the front. So with this, we've drafted the back piece and the front piece. And like I mentioned before, I'll not be cutting this back into two. I'll just hold the dart directly on fabric. I'll go ahead now and cut this front into two before we go ahead and cut out on our fabric. What I do most times is iron my estée to my fabric and to my lining before I place my pattern paper and cut. It makes it easier for you. So I'll go ahead now, iron this estée to my fabric and I'll cut, and I'll be right back to show you guys. So this is what we have after cutting out on fabric. Remember, for this back piece, I did not tear it into two, center back and side back. I cut it one piece. What I just did is to mark out the dart point. If you don't know how to do this, you can just place a pin at the end of the dart point, use your marker to mark that point, place a pin on the other side, mark it out, then use your ruler to do the connection. So I've done this on both the lining and on the main fabric. Also, I added seam allowance, 1 inch seam allowance to my side, and then to the down, I added 2 inch allowance to fold in the lining. As you can see, the lining is 2 inches shorter than the main fabric. So that's what I just did here. Don't get confused. It's very easy and straightforward. Remember to add your sewing allowance to the sides and the turning allowance to the full length. The center front is cut on fold, as we already know. So this is what we have for both the front piece and the back piece. I'll go ahead now and remove the pattern papers and pin these pieces together the way we are going to be joining them in the sewing machine. Thank you so much for watching to this point. Remember to like this video, share and subscribe to the channel, and also turn on your notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever we drop our weekly tutorials. Just so you know, your likes and comments means a lot to me, and the highest support you can give to me is to subscribe to the iFashi channel. Thank you so much to those of you that have subscribed already. Thank you to our returning viewers. Thank you for all the amazing love you all showed me last year. We hope to have a better 2026 with all of you. After pinning the front piece of the main fabric together, the next thing is to repeat the same thing on the front piece of the lining before we go ahead and pin the back and stitch. Now for the back piece, there's nothing much to pin here. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the pattern paper, pin down this little dart we have here, After pinning it down, I also pin the two pieces of the main fabric together and pin the two pieces of the lining together. When we get to the sewing machine, all you just need to do is to stitch from the down of the dress, that's the full length of the dress, up to where your zipper will stop, which is usually 9 inches downwards from the waist. So I'll pin this dart point now because I'll be stitching the two dart points, and I'll also stitch the zipper allowance. For the zipper allowance, I'm not stitching the whole thing down. I'm stopping 9 inches under my waist so that we can attach the zipper to the upper part. So I'll take these pieces to the sewing machine now, both the front and back. I'll stitch everything and I'll be right back to show you what we have. Now here's what we have after stitching all the pieces together. We've gone ahead to stitch both the main fabric and the lining of both front and back. So like I mentioned before, for this back, I'll just stitch and stop where the zipper is going to end and leave the rest part open so that I can fix my zipper there. The next thing we're going to do now is to iron out this seam. Open your seam and iron. Endeavor to make this a habit. It makes your work very, very neat. So this is what we have after ironing. I decided to iron off camera in order not to waste much of our time. So I've ironed down the zipper allowance on both the main fabric and on the lining. I've also ironed out the stitch we made at the front. When you're ironing, please, on this bust part, the curve we have at the bust, endeavor to use your bust ham to iron that bust curve so that you don't end up having squeezes or even flatten out the curve we have at the bust. The next thing now is to go ahead and use the lining to turn the main fabric on the neck part of the front. So we are going to place the lining and the main fabric right sides facing each other like this and pin it down all through the neck. I'll use my pin to secure it all around and take it to the sewing machine and stitch. After making the first stitch, I'll open it to the right side and make a top stitch on top of the lining. That top stitch will make the neck to sit very well. And after doing this, we're going to be ending this first part of this tutorial here so that it doesn't get too long. We'll continue with the finishing of the sewing in the part 2 of this tutorial. And in the second part of this tutorial, you get to see how we achieved this neat finishing, how we turned the whole of the inside to avoid weaving, and also how we embellished it with rhinestones to bring out the beauty in this very simple dress. Here's the beautiful dress we made from this tutorial, guys. You can see how the zipper is laying very flat at my back. No budges, no squeezes whatsoever. Thank you so much for watching to this point. Remember to like and share this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the part 2 of this tutorial.